My name is Arati Ramappa. I am the co-chair of the Tech Council along with Omer. Before we begin and give our backgrounds a little bit, and we're happy to have our speakers Adam and Yasmin with us today. I just wanted to make sure that everybody starts putting their information in the chat. Even though it's virtual, we do want to network, and you can save the chats at the end of the session with everybody's contact information. Okay, so my name is Arati Ramappa, and I am an executive coach, and I do executive coaching and corporate coaching, team building. I work on strategy with teams and team building with conflict management, communication, productivity, and really helping build high-performing teams. And the other side of me, I do spiritual coaching with individuals too. So I have those two sides. My background is in tech, though. I was started off as a programmer 20 years ago, and I also had a technology consulting company and operations management consulting company for 10 years, but I always had a tugging need to help people in a more direct manner. So I decided to become an executive coach, and now I do coaching, and I love entrepreneurship. So that is my background, and I just want Omer to give my co-chair. You can give a little bit about your background, Omer.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Omer Barsadeh, and I am the founder and CEO of Vision Movies. It's a video production company that specializes in creating digital content for small and growing businesses. We are also the official media partner for the Miami Beach Chamber of Commerce. I've been doing that for many years, and especially during COVID, the whole technology side took over, any kind of digital marketing. So we were able to give and provide some more information to business owners. And that was a great opportunity to be a part of the Tech Council. This is, by the way, Arti and mine last meeting that we're leading this year. And Arti will talk more to who's replacing us. But it's been a great experience throughout the past year to be in touch and provide some more information to business owners in the Miami area. So this is it.
Okay, and yes, and as Omar said, this is our last Tech Council event. I will be moving on to becoming the co-chair of the DE&I Council, but we do have our incoming co-chair, Michael Goldstein. So if you want to just give a little bit of your background, and you'll be taking over and what you see moving forward.
So I'm Michael Goldstein. I'm president of Land Infotech. I own a IT services company. We are pillar members of the chamber going on year 2. We service small and medium businesses that are there with a very big focus in cybersecurity and not-for-profits. So we offer a lot of discounts to not-for-profits from our manufacturers, and I'll just say offer amazing technical services.
Thank you. Okay, so before we begin, we just want to go over the mission of the Technology Council. So if you can put that up there, Leslie. And I do want to give Leslie a big shout out. She has helped us through this year, and without her, we cannot put these things together. And so thank you so much, Leslie. So our mission with the Technology Council is to educate about and promote the benefits of technology by keeping the Miami Beach Chamber members informed of the latest technology developments impacting their businesses and the local community. We want to foster connections and communications with the tech ecosystem in Miami Beach and beyond. Okay, so now with all of that, we are going to get into the topic that we are talking about today, and is what investors are looking for in their startups and the entrepreneurs that they want to invest in. And we have Adam Garfield and Yasmin Morrison with us today, and I'm going to just give you a little bit of their background really quick, and then I'll let them introduce themselves. So first with Adam, he is the founder of You were the founder of SpeedTap, correct? And you are also working with Wix, and you are also one of the founders of Flamingo Capital. So give us a little bit of your background, because you have a huge background, and I'd rather you go into it than myself.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Arti. So again, my name's Adam Garfield, Miami born and raised. So I like to say that I'm one of like the 7 people to actually be born and raised in Miami. Started Speedy Tab, which was a restaurant technology company that I founded in 2014. The goal of that was really to help restaurants compete and survive against Uber Eats and DoorDash and third-party delivery by having them give them tools to have their own online ordering and own app experience where they could have a direct channel to their own customers. That company was acquired by Wix earlier this year. Wix is one of the world's largest web development platforms. And they're headquartered in Tel Aviv, Israel, but they do have an office right here on Miami Beach off Lincoln Road in Michigan. It's actually Wix's largest US office. We just surpassed 300 employees in that office, 5,500 employees globally. So now at Wix, I'm VP of Wix Restaurants, which is Wix's restaurant product geared at helping small and medium-sized businesses that have online ordering, reservations, menus, and things like that, so that they can provide the best guest experience and help increase revenue. In parallel, myself, Chris Adamo, and Will Weinrob, all also Miami OGs, started Flamingo Capital together, which is an angel syndicate, and we can get more into what that means in a bit. But really the thesis behind that angel syndicate is connecting Miami to the rest of the country and the rest of the country to Miami when it comes to technology startups, but also when it comes to investors themselves. So how do we bring Miami startups in front of investors from across the country? And how do we bring investors from Miami exposure to startups, in Silicon Valley and New York and across the country? And thanks for having me.
Thank you, Adam. And we have Yasmin with us, and Yasmin has lived and worked across the globe from Dubai to London, but she is newly here and had moved to Miami in 2020, and she joined Florida Funders as an investor. She also was a teaching fellow at Harvard, and she previously started several startups, worked with Amazon, and has spent time as a VC at Antler. So Yasmin, please give us a little bit of your background. You have a very interesting background.
Thank you for this. Thank you for having me. Not born and raised in Miami, born and raised in Sweden and France. Spent a lot of time living in different places, have a pretty mixed background, ranging from having my own startups, working with the European Union, management consultant, and fairly recently went into venture capital. And I accidentally kind of moved to Miami, like many people, I guess, did last year. So in November, I took a 1-month Airbnb lease, and there were so many great things happening, fell in love with Miami and the people and the ecosystem, and decided to make the move. And shortly after, joined Florida Funders. And we are a hybrid between an angel network and a VC fund. So what that means is that we have our own fund that we are actively investing out of, and we also have an angel network. So if we make an investment, we can also put it out to what our angels, which is about 1,600 angels. And we also love to support founders in Florida, obviously given the name Florida Funders. So we love to invest here in Florida and the Southeast, but we also do invest outside, even though Florida is definitely the place we prefer to invest.
Okay, great. And I see that we have Bo Meganson here, and I would like you to be a part of this conversation too, Bo, since you're in investing. Can you give a little bit of your background?
Sure, Athena. Again,
because I know you've been very busy.
It's okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate you letting me join, and sorry for being late. So, but yes, I'm Bo Meganson, the managing partner of Gold Coast Angel Investors, and following the lead of Adam and Yasmin, and we've got some new developments there. But we've been here about 2 years. I actually opened the office here 2.5 years ago, and when I moved here 2 years ago in August of 2019, and we subsequently have added, even through COVID, 7 portfolio companies. in that time. The last 6 months, however, has really been interesting as we've actually, through some of our investors, and we've done some things with Florida funders as well, but through some of our investors, because we have a really regional presence through Boca Raton, West Palm Beach, and Fort Lauderdale, as well as Miami, even though I'm in Miami Beach. We, through some of our investors, had the initiative to start and launch a fund, and that we'll be announcing probably in a couple of weeks with some GPs. That I know Yasmin's met one of our partners, a lady from the Silicon Valley that's moving here named Jagriti Bika. She was in the Valley for about 25 years, lived in Singapore, Hong Kong. I've known her through angel investing, the world, for the last couple of years. And she told me back in February that she was leaving the Valley and wanted to either come to Toronto or come to the East with a lot of the other people that she worked with on the coast, West Coast. And we've convinced her through, again, Yasmin and Maria Russo were helpful in helping sell her on coming to South Florida. So, and I'll look forward to introducing her to you guys, and particularly getting her back in with you, Yasmin, and really letting her be incorporated into the women in tech and movement that's so strong here. But she's coming here, and then but we're targeting Israeli-based technology companies, much like Adam referenced with Wix, and bringing those companies that are not in the U.S. market here to the U.S., to Miami, to South Florida, Miami particularly, not to New York, not to D.C., but to Miami, and then using Miami as the launching pad for those companies into the U.S. as well as the Latin American markets. And we'll be actually talking and publicizing that a little bit more in the next couple of weeks. But this is really the first time I've talked about it publicly.
We are excited. Thank you for sharing that information. I have so many questions, and Bo, I'm going to bring you on the panel if you don't mind, with Adam and Yasmin. And so before we begin, I just want to give I really want to put it out there because I know some people get really confused with venture capital and angel investing. So I would like you to, and private equity. So what are you doing? I would like everybody to tell us because Yasmin was saying hybrid. Can you give us the difference between those, and when do you actually fund? Because there is a difference in timing where you actually fund startups. So I want to start with Adam and tell us what you're doing, and if you can give a little bit of background of when you are funding, because that's a big difference of the type of control that they have over a company, but actually when do they start funding? Is it in the beginning, early stage? So if you can give us a little bit of that background and the differences.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a very dynamic proposition, constantly shifting and changing, and lots of people use different terms. So I certainly hear you. It can be very confusing. For Flamingo Capital, we're an angel syndicate, which is an even probably newer term than VC or angel investor or anything like that. So historically, on one side of the spectrum, you have angel investors, and these are individuals that typically must be accredited. So as an accredited investor, you have to meet certain criteria set by the SEC. These are things like a certain amount of net worth or income, things like that. And then usually angel investors are writing personal checks that only represent themselves. And these are checks that typically at a minimum are going to be about $25,000 or $50,000 checks, can go higher based on their net worth and interest in the company. And typically as a founder or as a company, you're looking for angel investors that can really add value personally to the platform that you're building or company that you're building. So these are going to be folks that have extreme knowledge in the sector that you're building in, or a strong network and value add in terms of who they can introduce you to and help you meet, and partnerships that they can help establish and things like that. So with Flamingo being an angel syndicate, what that means is it allows anyone that's an accredited investor to write smaller checks, as little as $1,000, into any number of companies that Flamingo brings in front of them. And so the cool thing about that from investor side is I'm not required to write larger checks. Maybe I have 10 companies that I like this month, but I don't have 25 times $10,000, so $250,000 to invest this month, but maybe I want to put 1,000 into each. Flamingo lets them do that. And for the company, why this is great for companies and founders is that this is all, I don't want to get too technical or into weeds, but this is all combined together in one special purpose vehicle, one SPV on your cap table. So as you grow and build a company, you want to keep a relatively clean cap table. And these are the folks that are investing in your company. And so angel syndicates have become very popular for that because it is just one line on your cap table, but can represent lots and lots of different angel investors. So before I keep rambling on, I guess
No, that was great. So basically you take all the angel investor money, right? You pool it, and then you're giving out one check to.
Well, yes and no. So we as Flamingo Capital don't necessarily take all that together and invest ourselves. It's that the angels themselves can either invest or not invest in a company. And if they do, correct.
Got it. Cool. So they're deciding on where they want to invest. Perfect.
Right.
Yasmin, you've been on both ends. So if you, and you're a hybrid. So give us a little bit more information on the differences. And you've both worked on in VC and with this new fund.
Yeah, and I think Adam did a pretty good overview in terms of angel, but we do C to Series A. So that's our fund that we have. And then we have the angel network, and that works exactly like Adam described. And I think to add to the conversation, a way of looking at it and the different stages that can get a little bit confusing. You traditionally have pre-seed, seed, and sometimes you don't even know. When I have a founder pitching, they will say it's a seed and someone says a pre-seed. So it's kind of mixing it up at the moment a little bit. But then you have the Series A, Series B, Series C, and then it gets to growth stage. And a way that another VC described it to me when I just started out was looking at it like if you were cutting an onion in half and you have all those different layers, and basically every layer is risk. So once you peel it off, once you've done the pre-seed, you have less risk than the seed. So you're basically peeling off these layers of risk. So the later stage, the more information you have and the less risk to invest. So you could look at it from that perspective to kind of get an understanding of all the different stages. But for us, we do early stage. We tend to not do the very, very early, like pre-seed. We do want to see a little bit of traction and revenue. So that's why we're at the seed and the Series A stage for both our fund and for the angel network.
Thank you. And I think it's great how you said risk, right? The different levels of risk. Of course, that you're saying in later stages, you're going to have less risk because it's with a more established, startup. So thank you for that. Bo, do you want to add to this conversation?
Sorry about that. Unmute myself. Yeah, I think they pretty much covered it. We look at very similar type of companies. Again, just as Yasmin said, we look for the two things that you'll hear me say the most: market adoption, proof of concept first. Is the widgeting somewhere, whether it's a pilot program or a beta test? Is there some proof of concept? And then is there some degree of market adoption? We don't do a cocktail napkin stage, which would be the really seed, where your friends and family. And she did, again, a great job of saying you get pre-seed, and sometimes people will differentiate, say, revenue, pre-revenue versus post-revenue. Do you actually have any revenues coming in? Pre-revenue is usually seed, pre-seed, where it's still, in some cases, at the cocktail napkin stage, where, here, let me draw out my business plan for you. But we're usually either, Series A or pre-Series A, where they've got maybe $500,000 or so, maybe 300,000 to $500,000 in revenues. Certainly not profitable, but have the ability to scale, but also in a market that has a vacuum of needing something, and has a large metric so that you can get to, maybe 10, 15, 20 million in revenues without having taken a huge chunk of the, maybe more than not even 1% of the market, so that there's really a large market cap so you can scale and get significant upside and scalability, and get up 10, 15x, and have at least a realistic shot at a 10, 15x return within 4 or 5 years.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for adding that a little bit more flavor to it. So it was very interesting. Now I want to know, what type of industries or, what type of startups are you looking to fund currently? Adam, you want to go?
Yeah, definitely. So Flamingo focuses is somewhat sector agnostic. Obviously, software is at the core of what we do. Most investors, and Flamingo, falls under this as well, would call that enterprise SaaS being the core of our investments. This is software as a service-based technologies. We also invest in marketplace technologies today. So, and then a little bit of CPG if it's very intriguing. Our last investment was actually in a company called Harmony Baby Nutrition, which is the impossible foods of baby formula. So that's a bit of a departure from our typical SaaS-based software products. And again, sector agnostic.
Okay, perfect. I like how you say sector agnostic, so you're open. Yasmin.
So we tend to do mainly B2B enterprise SaaS, and the verticals where we have the most expertise are fintech, cybersecurity, edtech, and future work and digital health. So those are the areas that we tend to invest most in. We will look at other interesting areas, and we will even look at B2C, but we like to invest in areas where we have that expertise and we can be helpful to the entrepreneurs.
So sorry, I had myself on mute. That's interesting. So you're really focused on B2B and not B2C, and in those different sectors. You said fintech, edtech, health tech. What else was that? Did you mention?
Cybersecurity and future work.
Okay, perfect. And what about you, Bo?
Yeah, it's Arathi, it's probably easier for me to tell you what we won't look at.
That's better.
We,
Yes.
we don't do restaurants or bars.
Mhm.
Don't do brick and mortar retail, don't do franchises, and don't do real estate. Yeah, there are already a couple of people in this town doing real estate, so I really bring no value to the table. But really, outside of that, I'll talk to almost anybody. And I've stopped trying to figure out where our next great deal is going to come from. Great example. I talked to a lady who wanted to grow a nail salon. Am I going to invest in a nail salon? No. But if I can talk to her and tell her about things like QuickBooks that she might not be aware of, or licensing or zoning or those kind of things that she needs to be aware of, and I'm too much of a big shot to do that, well, shame on me, And I use that example because that actually happened to us back at the group I was with before, where I just talked to a lady just to give her some ideas, and she actually happened to have a daughter who was interning at the Atlanta Technology Development Center. She was an engineering student at Georgia Tech and was interning at a company we actually had under due diligence at the time. And we were actually able to get some information, not secret information, but she was able to give us more meat on the bone of what that company was doing. We actually invested in them. So I think that was kind of the karmic forces telling me, you get repaid for doing good work. But anyway, ultimately, just like Adam and Yasmin said, we're looking for things that scale quickly. And software technological companies are things that can scale the most quickly, and do so with the least amount of capital. And ultimately, that's what we're in. We're in the capital appreciation business. We're not in the technology business. We're in capital appreciation. And whatever will give us the best revenue multiples, whether it's software as a service multiples or IT-enabled healthcare, frankly, that's what we'll look at. And we've got some expertise in certain areas as well. But that's what we don't do is the best thing I can tell you.
Mm-hmm.
Just to piggyback off what Bo is saying, if you zoom out on this whole conversation altogether, I think it's really important for folks that are starting companies right now to understand that raising venture capital isn't a requirement to grow your company, and it's not the right route for everyone. Mm-hmm. Folks that are raising venture capital or, syndicate and et cetera, whatever, PE, all that realm, those folks, we are oftentimes looking for, how does this become a $10 billion, $100 billion company? And not every idea, is made to become that size of a company. And frankly, nor does it need to be that size of a company to be successful. And so in the media, especially in the media, we overhype billion-dollar exits and unicorn status and things like that. However, on the opposite side of that, the lifestyle business is called a lifestyle business because it allows you to have a great lifestyle. And those are businesses that don't raise venture capital or large amounts of capital, but are still very successful in what they do and are able to grow and scale on their own without taking in outside capital. So it's very important to also, like to make sure to show both sides of the equation in terms of there's more options than just having to raise venture and having to get to these large scale multiples and exponential growth and all these prerequisites to becoming this like unicorn company.
I think that's a great statement that you made, because it is, everybody is, dreaming of all these, venture capital, and it's not necessarily for everybody, and it's not necessarily actually the way to go for all businesses. So I think that was really wonderful that you made that statement. And we've had a lot of new people come in since we started this conversation. Please just make sure to put your information in the chat so that you can network with people while you're here. Keep in contact with everybody. I tell everybody, find at least one person in these meetings that you're going to meet up with and follow up with, because this is for networking. And also there's a lot of people on here that don't have their video showing, and I know there's a lot of new people, so if you want to turn your video on, we would love to see you. So getting into that, when you are looking to fund different startups, I want to know, let's get into the bulk of the conversation. What are you looking for from these companies? And then we'll go on to what you're looking in for their founders, but let's first start. What are you looking for in these companies? Bo, you had mentioned that, you want to see, companies that can scale quickly. So give me some, metrics or measurements or things that you're looking for in a company.
Right. Well, again, we're looking to scale value. And if I don't think we can get 10X, let's say they're $500,000 in revenues, obviously we want to be able to get them to 5 million in revenues. And do so without having to get 80% of the market. So there needs to be a large addressable market. That's a big thing. How much skin in the game have they already developed, and how much have they committed already? And for me, I won't say that great ideas are on every street corner. They're not, but they're more available than great operators. To me, to the best of my ability, Arathi, I will never earn the scar tissue again, both literal and figurative, of putting big money into an average management team behind a good technology. That is, I've never seen a good management team, a great management team with an average technology be underperformed by a great technology with an average management team. Management team will almost always win. In fact, I've never seen it not perform better. So from my perspective, we're vetting the people. We're vetting their team, and certainly an early stage team is not going to have all the components they need to scale up, but they need to have a group of advisors that are guiding them. They need to be able to have a pathway and have at least thought through how are they going to bring in additional talent to fill in the gaps they're going to need, because it's one skill set to get from $0 to $1 million. It's another skill set to get from 1 to say 5 or 6. And then it's a totally different skill set to get 6 to 15 to 20. And very, very few people have all those skill sets. There's not a lot of Adam Garfields out there. And so you have to be able to find people that do that, or at least if they recognize that. When someone says, I do this well, but I don't do this well. Okay, I can work with that person. And be able to have at least a path or a plan for how are we going to fill in those talent gaps. And if they're not willing to be coachable, and these are not things that you can really figure out over Zoom. You have to really be able to meet people. In fact, I won't invest in a company if I can't meet the entrepreneurs, because particularly how they treat a waiter or a waitress in a restaurant will tell you a lot about them. But it's all about the team. The team is what's going to allow you, because the last 3 exits when I was at AIM before I came to Miami, the last 3 exits we had different CEOs than we had when we first invested in the company, and that's not a fun process. So I'll kick it over to get Yasmin and Adam's take.
I think I was kicked off, so I missed the question, but is what we look in
for, in a startup that you want to fund. And Bo went to the management team. And
And I definitely echo what Bo just said in terms of it's much better to invest in a good founder and a bad idea than a great idea and a bad founder. Specifically in the early stages, things are going to change anyway. So I definitely agree on that point. And founders are so incredibly important. And then, of course, is the market size large enough? If it's not large enough, then from our perspective, can we get our returns? So that would be something we look at. And then the last thing is traction. Like I mentioned before, we tend to invest. We want to see a little bit of revenue or some sort of a pipeline of clients. It is important to see that the company has started moving in the right direction, even though it's early. We want to have that kind of, and that's a way for us to de-risk the investment as well. If you come back to that aspect, all these things we're discussing is if the market size is large enough, there is less risk. If the management team is fantastic, there's also less risk. And another thing to kind of add to that management team is, in an ideal world, you want to invest in founders who had previous exits. That's not always possible, but if they have had that, that also de-risks the investment to some extent. And then of course the traction that gives you a little bit of reassuring that they are heading in the right direction. So I'd say those three things are some of the most important aspects that we would look at.
Okay, thank you, Yasmin. I have so many questions I want to hear Adam, and please, if anybody has any questions for our panelists, please put them in the chat because we are going to get to them and we'll have a little bit of a Q&A at that.
Awesome. I think Bo and Yasmin made great points. In the early stages, a lot of investors are going to say team first. And I think as a former founder that wasn't a multiple exited previously founder, nor was I MIT, Harvard, or Caltech or top computer science programming founder. I found what do you say to that person, right? So when you talk to someone that has a startup and when you talk about team, they feel they're a great team, but they don't have perhaps the resume of amazing computer science or Ivy League school, nor multiple recent exits on their resume. What advice would I give them is what kind of runs through my head.
Mm-hmm.
So, because I didn't have those things.
Mm-hmm.
If you do have those things, it makes fundraising so much easier. But if you don't have those things, what that means is you need a few different things that I just wrote down here. One is MVP, which is minimal viable product. And so right now is the golden age, in my opinion, of starting a company, right? There are more tools available to all of us than ever before. And it's cheaper, faster, and easier than ever in the history of the world to start a technology company or any company. And you can do this with a fraction of the resources that even 10 years ago, it would have cost, maybe $1 million to launch an idea out there with the right team and right product and resources. And now you can do that for, almost practically free with no code backends and front end tools and everything at your disposal. And oftentimes you can launch your company if you really delve down into it without a technology aspect in the beginning at all, with most of the times with the idea itself. And so as rudimentary as you can get to prove that there's demand there, to prove that there's an early product market fit, I think those are the key things. And that's followed by investors will talk about TAM a lot. That's your total addressable market. I think going to both Yasmin and Bo's points, you want to make sure that this is an idea that can scale to a point that this can become a large enough company for the fund and its LPs to see a positive return. And then the last thing that I really circled on was focus. I think as a startup founder, it's easy to see lots of different uses and ideas for your technology, your idea, your product. I call it kind of like the Amazon process, where you have to start, what is your books, right? Where Amazon just focused on books for so long, you need to be able to just solely have one single focus that you really excel on beyond anyone else's comprehension. And from there, you do need to be able to show investors the rest of that roadmap and where this company can go and what are the other verticals that this touches. But having a single focus to start off with as you're building in the early stages is just so important. And it's a little concerning when I hear founders that are looking at doing 40 different things for their one company. It shows me kind of that there's not one single direction, and that's a big red flag to investors. So you want to make sure you have a single focus.
I think that is so perfect. I've worked with a lot of startups when I was consulting and when I do executive and business coaching, and focus is really key. I mean, you have what I see with a lot of founders is that they come and they want to do all these different things. One thing, if you can phase it out and show those phases and the growth on top of each one, that's one thing. But you mentioned a great point. They'll say they have an app that does 20 different things, and I'm like, there's no focus there, right? All of you mentioned, management team, and I would like to get more into that. But before we get there, I do also want to make the point that all of you mentioned was a viable product. And one thing that I think I see sometimes in the startup community is everybody's really more focused on getting VC money than creating a viable product. It's one of my pet peeves, but I'm glad that you, minimal viable product, as you said, MVP, Adam, was great. So now that you've mentioned management team, I want to know from all of you, what do you consider a good management team? One thing you mentioned, Bo, was like understanding your strengths and weaknesses, and it might change over phases. So can you give us a little bit more of what you're looking for in a founder and their management team?
Sure. And this actually kind of segues with what Adam was just talking about focus. And, I'm kind of a Jim Collins devotee, but having excellence. When you're doing a startup, to get yourself above the noise, you have to be excellent at something. You can't just be good. You have to be excellent. That's the difference between a third-round draft pick in a sport and a top 5 pick. You're excellent. That's what separates you. And to really make your company pop and separate you, you need to be excellent. And it's hard to do that when you're doing 6 or 7 or 8, 9 different things. And nothing breeds success like success. You have a success with one thing. You get this right, and you build credibility. You talked about what does that look like. Having success with something, with one thing. And what I'll tell people, particularly we work with, because when you talk to entrepreneurs, well, we can do this, we can do that, we can do that. Wait. You can't do number 2, 3, and 4 until you do number 1 first. Let's get number 1 right. Let's get that done. Let's get that excellent. Let's get that product, that app, whatever it is, where it's working well. Maybe you don't really see it to the market yet, but it's working. And you've got something you can present, and then you can build off that, because nothing, just like with founders, why did people throw money at Adam and at Yasmin? Because they've got success. It doesn't have to be a big success. You can have a success, but but sometimes you have failures before you have successes. So what are we looking for? You've heard me use the term scar tissue. People that have overcome stuff. It doesn't have to necessarily be a chapter 7, which a lot of people have. You overcome that, you get off the ground, you get knocked down, you get back up, because running an early stage company is a combat sport. It's a contact sport. You're going to get hit. You're going to get knocked down. That's not even debatable. Are you willing to get back up? And have you been in situations? I'll be graphic. One of our companies we've invested in, it's a app. The founder's a cancer survivor. He's 37 years old, went through Hodgkin's lymphoma when he was 29. And he has a different perspective, and he works hard. He's been through more to get to this point, just from a life perspective. I'm not telling anybody to go get cancer, but he has enough scar tissue, literal and figurative, that he understands what it takes to grind it, to commit to something, to overcome whatever the obstacle happens to be, with a vision for where you're going. It's a clear vision to get to the next level. And they're doing that. He's just taking what he went through chemo and applying that principle to what he's doing here. So it doesn't have to be something that dramatic. That's an example of what I will look for with, or some success. Did they go from being the drive-up window person at Chick-fil-A to being the store manager in 6 months? Something like that. It can be that simple. So that's what I look for. Do they have something that they built on? They've had some success, and they've had maybe some obstacles, and they've overcome those and built on it. Somebody who had to pay their way through college. or go in the military and take GI Bill, go through college. That's because they didn't want to go through debt. Those are indications that you see enough of that we look for.
So you're saying resilience is a big thing, right? And how did they
It's required. You cannot overstate that. You can't overstate it.
Yeah. How do you overcome obstacles? Because as a founder, you're going to have a lot of obstacles. Yasmin.
I think a lot of great things have already been said. The one thing I could add that I like to see from founders is that the problem they're solving is something that they discover themselves. So this is something they might have worked on or something in their personal life, but it's something that they find a solution to. It's not just like, oh, we can, of course it's about making money, but it's not just like, oh, I saw this opportunity. It's like something that you truly know really deep. You have deep expertise in the area, and you know exactly what the problems are, and you find a way to solve it. So I would say that to add, and I completely agree. It's about perseverance and grit. Things are going to be very shaky, and it's not going to be an easy ride. So if you don't have that, it's that it's probably going to be really tough. So those ones I very much agree on.
Adam.
Yes. I think the first thing is it's team, I think is the word that you mentioned. And so oftentimes, the most famous program for startups at this point might be Y Combinator. Y Combinator is famous for their requirement of co-founders. It is not a single founder. And as a single founder, you're not allowed into the program. You're required to have a co-founder. And that's because I believe in their opinion, in my opinion too, that going it alone is very tough as a startup. And so the importance of co-founders, and let alone like the rest of the management team, but even if it's two co-founders, in my experience, it was myself and Ed Gilmore as my co-founder, is so important because as part of that, your co-founder should have a complementary skill set to what you're good at. So like, I think Bo was mentioning, you should know what you're good at, know what you're not good at. Well, the stuff that you're not good at, hopefully your co-founder is good at that, right? And so in an ideal world, that would be, one co-founder would come from a strong technical background and be able to fill much of that CTO and perhaps product role in the early stages, while the other co-founder is stronger on the distribution of those technologies and how do you acquire new customers and handling sales and marketing. So I think we're really looking for, and in general, it's important to have in the early stages a complementary set of skills between the co-founders and the founding team, where you're really seeing proficiencies in different areas of the company and who's handling each of those. So I think that's a big component. And then the other one is just strength of industry knowledge. So you should be the expert on this as the operator and the founder. And I never want to feel like the operator founder isn't aware of something or isn't up to speed on as much of their industry after we do research on our side. So as investors, unless we have a real singular sector focus, oftentimes in those early stages, we're doing additional research on your industry and your sector and understanding the competitive landscape and the trends within that space. And if you're, as the founder, you should be more of a expert in that industry than anyone else I talk to. And I want to know that if there's one person that I have to choose that can tell me about this sector, it's going to be that this founder knows it. So I think really that's not just like what is the market size or TAM, that's like what's the compounded annual growth rate, what is the competitive landscape, what are the trends, what are the threats, all those things should be at top of mind for the founding team.
Great. That's really great advice there about your co-founders and then being an expert in your field. One of the things, and thank you for all that, it was such great information. I'm curious though, Yasmin and I were talking about this before when we met before having this council event today. And we were talking about what are the things that you wish founders knew that they don't get?
I think I can start here. I think we've already kind of spoken a little bit about it, but I think I meet incredible entrepreneurs and who has fantastic businesses, but sometimes they're not something that you would, from a VC perspective, invest in. They are more of the lifestyle businesses, like Adam mentioned, and I'm, sure that they're going to be very successful, but it's not an investment that we would make because we're looking for 10x plus. We want to make that something, we're investing for scale. So I think sometimes founders should look at it from that perspective, like what kind of business do I have, and is this something that makes sense to get VC money from? And I know Adam mentioned that as well. Really figuring out what kind of business are you running, and what's the kind of purpose? Is it to have a great lifestyle and be really successful, or is it to build something enormous? And also, I think it's become such a trend to raise from VC, and there's so much capital in the market, but you don't have to do it. And I also love when founders bootstrap and they don't raise capital until a much later stage. I think that is incredible. So I'd like to see more of that. And I always appreciate when founders tell me that they don't need my money.
That's great.
And I think to piggyback on that, I think you're seeing the first great press story around that recently is MailChimp. I'm sure many of you might know MailChimp as like the email provider to handle your lists and your campaigns. They raised $0 in venture. To unicorn status. So it can be done. And that's, I think, the most amazing recent example of that I'm glad is getting some hype in the media. Because like Yasmin was saying, there's nothing wrong with bootstrapping. And as a former operator and founder, my advice would be to bootstrap as long and as much as possible, because for yourself, it's going to retain your equity position in there. You don't want to dilute yourself before you really have to and reach that growth phase. And if you're not at that stage of product market fit yet, which oftentimes it takes a lot of time to find, you can really be as efficient as possible and bootstrap if, outside investors aren't ready to invest in you, or you're not ready yourself. Mm-hmm. But I think, sorry, go ahead, Bo.
No, finish your thought.
I was just to answer the question, I was gonna say, I think the most important thing time and time again now that I haven't seen done very well is just a pure importance of storytelling, framing, and executive explanation. I'll kind of loop those three things together. And I think, and I was guilty of this too, as a founder and operator, you're so passionate about what you're building and your head is so much in the weeds of all these different minutia and day-to-day things that are going right and going wrong and things that you're building, that it's really important when explaining to investors what you're working on to be able to tell a cohesive and strong story. Because if you have one responsibility as the founder of a company, it's to be able to show the vision of this company, the mission of this company, and why you're doing what you're doing. And why shouldn't anyone care about that? And that's first and foremost, before anything else, because that's not only how you attract investment, but that's also how you attract great employees, great customers, great partners. You have to have that strong story and communication skills about what you're doing and why you're doing it. And it's what I've seen a lot is like really too minutia or hodgepodge, everything mixed together, but there really needs to be a cohesive story around what you're doing, why you're doing it. And then I think it was Yasmin that mentioned like the problem that you ran into as a human being that made you start this company is often the best genesis for that story.
Yes.
And then from a framework and framing position as you raise venture capital, it's really important to put that and position that in a way that investors can understand and somewhat even compare it to things that are already in the market and that they might already be familiar with. And then lastly is just that executive level of explanation. You want to make sure that you can cohesively explain in an elevator pitch style to an investor what the problem is that you're solving and what is your solution. Without a 5-minute rant, Like you should be able to explain that in one sentence. I think YC makes you do it in one sentence in one slide also. Like it should be that simple. And oftentimes it's like a 10-minute soliloquy and that's a red flag.
Okay, well, I mean, thank you, all of you. There's just so much valuable information that you're giving all of us today. And Bo, what is the one thing that you see that you wish that founders would get?
I think having a clear focus, a clear understanding of what you're trying to accomplish and what the destination is. I don't care if is it to walk away with a $10 million check? Do you want to build something like Adam said and that Yasmin said? Do you want to build a lifestyle company that you hand off to your children or to your friends or whatever it happens to be, or your partner? Having a clear destination or understanding of what you're trying to accomplish. What is, if you're at point A, what is point B?
Mm-hmm.
And then once you crystallize what point B is, then you can lay out the path through what you need. What team members do you need? What's the timing involved? What resources do we need? But you can't know any of that until you know exactly what you're trying to accomplish. And so oftentimes it's what we want to build this company. We see this in as both Adam and Yasmin said, you fill a need, you see a need, okay? And we're going to fill the need, okay? But then get granular. What is it we want to do? What is point B? What are we getting at? Now, you might see you get to point B quicker than you thought. Now, wow, we need to readjust. Okay, we need to go farther. We can do more than we thought. Or, as again, Yasmin said, well, maybe it's not quite as big as we thought it was. We need to kind of pivot a little bit and readjust. But you can't know any of that until you establish what you are trying to accomplish and where you're trying to go. And that gives you the path, the clarity to have the pathway to get started and start bringing those pieces together. So that's what I tell everybody. First things first, what are we trying to accomplish here? What's your goal? If you're point A, what is point B? And if you don't know, sit down with you and your partner and your significant other, determine that, because you're wasting your time until you know exactly what that is, in my opinion.
Okay, great. Thank you. So much, I mean, just in those three answers, there was so much there. Focus, storytelling, there's just a lot there. My co-chair, Omar, has a question. You want to go?
Yes, so let's say that a great entrepreneur has a great idea. How can you provide, or do you know any of any tools that this entrepreneur can, go and explore and see if his idea is worth anything, and just take it from an idea to the first step?
Yeah, there's a lot of different tools. It really depends. I hate to answer it depends, but it depends on what it is that you're building and what the area is. I think oftentimes we rely too much and stop ourselves too much based on certain product and technology needs and in the real early stages that can be replaced by other means and methods. So as an example, like a startup idea that I liked myself as a new cyclist was like, there should be a AAA or roadside assistance for cyclists that have flat tires or mechanical issues. So it'd be cool to have an app that lets you request that on demand and gives you the tracking of the assistance driver as they get to you. And you can think of all kinds of ideas that pile onto that from a technology perspective. But if you think about, for instance, AAA in the past, that was done completely without technology, and they were able to acquire customers and reach a significant amount of revenue without any of that. And so, in that case, in my idea, I could actually start that business entirely without any technology. Now, their Bubble would be the most, I think, talked about tool currently for backend. So Bubble and Airtable are both great software tools for folks that are looking to build products and have kind of a backend as a service that's readily available for you with no code. And then on the front end of that, obviously I'm at Wix. Wix has great no-code solutions across the spectrum from web into native mobile itself that anyone can build on top of. So those would be like my first go-tos.
Okay. Does anybody want to add, Yasmin or Bo?
Yeah, I think I completely agree there as well. I think an even earlier thing you can try out than starting building the tech is to get into Facebook groups, ask people you know, and start like gathering information to see, is this something that people want, and how do they want it? So there is things you can do before you even start using these digital tools. And I personally know that a lot of founders have used things like Facebook groups to gather that kind of early initial feedback and information before you start putting effort into, if it's Bubble or Wix, or building something yourself. So I think that's it.
Perfect. Thank you. Bo?
I don't really have a lot to offer there. Again, from a technical perspective, Adam and Yasmin have forgotten more than I'll ever know. So I'll defer to them. But for most of because I'm not a technical person. I'm not an engineer. So I can help on the operations side, but that's what we look for. If they got something, or at least a pathway to a minimal viable product.
Okay. Okay, so I want to open it up to questions from the audience. Does anybody have any questions? You can raise your hand. You can use the reaction and raise your hand where it says reaction. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, we're not seeing a lot of questions, but my last question I want to end with Yasmin and Adam. You've been on both sides of it, right? So you've been the entrepreneur and looking for the funding. So what advice from that side of being a founder would you give? Oh, you have a hard stop. So if you can say it in 2 minutes.
Sure. Advice as a founder in general?
Yeah, can we go with Yasmin? Because I know she has to go really quick. So just in general.
Sorry, can you repeat the question? So as a
what would you give as a founder, what type of advice would you give founders? Because you've been on both sides.
Oh gosh.
Just one
Yeah.
There's so
much. One thing that you would leave everybody with.
So much. I guess is to really do your research on the VCs and be strategic about raising money and line people up and find the ones that are best fit for you, and really that was one of the mistakes that I did. So be really strategic about that and think through it and have a long planned strategy.
Thank you so much, Yasmin. And if you have to jump off, I understand you've been so valuable today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. Adam and then Bo.
Yes. My number one rule would be just don't die. And I don't mean as a human, but I mean like as a company, just stay alive and trudge through is 90% of your battle. There's lots of hurdles that will be getting in the way. There are lots of no's, thousands of things that will go wrong. Your job as a founder is to fight through it and to not give up and to not quit, no matter what. And I think going back to earlier discussions around when you're raising money and bootstrapping, like from personal experience, I've bootstrapped with my life savings. And so for me, failure was never an option. And that's I think a mindset that's so important regardless of whether it's your life savings or not. And that's part of why investors like seeing skin in the game from founders. But it's really that you're going to continue no matter what happens. And I think with that, what that means is it's not just continuing with your same idea. It's important to continue to try and find product market fit if you don't have it. And SpeedyTab itself made multiple pivots throughout its journey. Most companies make multiple pivots throughout their journey. Name any successful company, the majority of them have pivoted and pivoted and pivoted again. Probably the most famous of them might be Instagram, right? Which started as like a location check-in company, found that photos as part of the check-ins were the most talked about and liked feature of their platform, and continued to kind of evolve on the photo side until they became the product that we know today, which again is pivoting towards video and away from photos. And SpeedyTab pivoted from a marketplace to B2B SaaS, from bars and alcohol into food and coffee so many times. So don't die, and learn how to pivot, and then learn how to tell a good story around all of that. Those are the most important aspects.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay, go on, Bo.
No, so, Adam said it all. I mean, it gets back to management team, ability to pivot, ability to analyze what's working, what's not, and being strong enough to be able to implement those changes and those alterations, and having the team around you. And I think there's also a balance between confidence and humility.
Yes.
You have to be confident not only in your mission and your vision and your abilities to do certain things, the ability to not do certain things, and not letting your ego take a hit when you bring in somebody who is, like, as Adam said, fills in and is strong where you're not, where your partner is strong where you're not. But also being humble enough to be teachable, be coachable, and be able to learn from the bloody wounds of your business that are bleeding, and what do we do to fix those and learn and accept that learning and move forward. So there's a balance there between confidence, not arrogance, but confidence, and humility that I think every successful founder will have at some point.
Oh, beautifully said. I love that mix of confidence and humility. And we are already 3 minutes over time. And I just want to say thank you to both of you. And Yasmin, that's not here. Oh, Adam got kicked out. Hold on.
He's there. He's just, here we go.
Sorry, my computer.
That's okay. I just want to say thank you. We are 3 minutes and we are going to close out. And thank you, Michael Goldberg. I see you there for coming in. But I just want to say there was Patricia had to jump off the chat, and her comment sums it up best of what you did today. She said, thank you so much for the information. Received a couple of offers to invest in our program, and what was said in this meeting helps me have a better foundation and idea of what to expect and look for. So,
hey, Rafi, thanks for recognizing me. I just want to say, Adam, I'm not normally on every council meeting like when I was chairman of the board from 2013 and 16, but when I treated me, Adam, you joined the chamber while I was chairman, and it was really interesting to watch what you've done and see your success. Bo and I met on the chamber trip to Curacao, and I'll leave the group with this, and you guys heard me say it for 3 years as chairman. I said every event, build a relationship and the business will come. Great group. I'm not a tech guy, but you know what? I learned a little bit. So I took a little bit away from this, but congratulations, Adam, on your success. Bo, good to see you, and everybody else. Just keep doing what you're doing with the chamber and it will pay off. Trust me. Thank you for recognizing.
Thank you so much.